Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf and to the second part of my 2020 tops and flops. And this time it's all about books that have been published in 2020, this year, new releases. If you haven't watched the part one video of the tops and flops 2020, the backlist books, I leave a link to that video down below. And as I explained in that video, I decided to split my 2020 tops and flops in the books published this year, this video, and books published before, so backlist books I read during the year. I read many more backlist books than new releases, but I did manage to read about 40 new releases, so there are plenty of books to choose from. And as in the other video about the backlist books, I picked 3 tops and 2 flops. So let's start with the tops. Oh, and neither tops nor flops are in any particular order, as I always do in my tops and flops. It's just 3 books that really impacted me, that I thought were really good, and I talk about them with you. Yeah, get your sentence straight. I talk about them with you in the order of publication. And the first one is a translated work, and you're probably not surprised because I raved about this book more than once on my channel, and that is Emuna Elon's book House on Endless Waters, translated from the Hebrew by Anthony Barris and Linda Yekiel. And it was published in January in this English translation. Emuna Elon is obviously an Israeli author, and I don't think there is any other book translated into English, but I feel that this one was a success, so hopefully we will see more of her, because she has published quite a series of books, I think, and now my nose is itching. Oh, we just roll with it. Anyway, so this book is set in Amsterdam. You can, if you know Amsterdam, you can probably recognize the typical Amsterdam houses, the house fronts. But anyway, it's set in Amsterdam in present day, at least that's how the book opens, when a very successful Israeli writer, Yoel Blum, comes to Amsterdam to promote his book. He was born in Amsterdam, but he and his mother and his sister fled during the Holocaust, just at the beginning of the Second World War, to Israel, and his mother never wanted him to return to Amsterdam. But there he is, and he has a free afternoon, and he visits the Amsterdam Jewish Museum, and the museum actually exists, and there are exhibits of pictures, photographs, Jewish family, Jewish life, but also little film clips. And he watches a film clip, and all of a sudden he recognizes his mother with a young girl who is obviously his sister, and on her lap a baby boy who is most obviously not him. That is the premise, and then Yoel starts to investigate what happened, what is the family secret, because there is a family secret. And the book is then split into 2 timelines. One, Yoel, while he's wandering through Amsterdam, trying, to visit the places that his family lived in, trying to find people who can explain things to him. And the other timeline is in the 1930s with his young family, his mother, and he was just born, experiencing the discrimination and later the real danger for Jewish people in Amsterdam. I thought this was a fascinating book about identity, about family history, and of course I'm not objective. I love books set in Amsterdam because I've lived there for quite a bit, but it really stayed with me, and it made me think about what makes your own identity. What if there's a family secret? How does that change the way you look at yourself or at your family? I thought it was fascinating and beautifully written. At least the translation is beautiful. This book, it was immediately clear that this would make it into my top tops of the year for the new releases. The second book in the tops category is published in March of this year, and it's a non-fiction book, Mickey Kendall, Hood Feminism, Notes from the Women White Feminists Forgot. And it's just what the title says. Mickey Kendall is a Black American writer, activist, feminist, and in this book, she talks about what it means to be a Black feminist. She talks about housing. She talks about the way white feminism often mistreats the not only Black feminists, but also the needs of Black women that might be quite different from the needs of white women, especially because there are more poor Black women than poor white women, percentage-wise, I mean, not in total figures. So they have a different need when it comes to feminism. And there are also a couple of stereotypes that Mickey Kendall discusses, the typical fierce Black woman, the angry Black woman. We all remember Michelle Obama having to deal with that. It's a real eye-opener. It was for me. It's also very well written and researched without bitterness. The points come across really well. The arguments are well crafted, and I'm all in for a finely crafted argument. I'm also in for a polemic if it's well done. But this book really impacted me to look at myself as a white feminist, to look at white feminism in Europe, where I live. So I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and a must read for everybody who is remotely interested in feminism and racism and the way we treat Black people, and in this instance in particular Black women. And the third and last book in the tops is fiction again, Australian fiction, Pip Williams' book, The Dictionary of Lost Words. Yeah, glare again. Sorry. Like I said, we have to roll with it today. It's the last day of the year. This was sent to me because it's an Australian book, and I read about it when it was published in the spring and couldn't get it anywhere. And then Annette Gilbert from the Raven Parlour bookstore in Australia sent this to me. And I promised to send her some German books back, but I couldn't because of the pandemic, and I wasn't allowed to send books. But hopefully in the new year, Annette, I can finally send you the books that I promised to send you this spring. Anyway, so this is an Australian author. Pip Williams wrote a travel memoir and I think one other non-fiction book. This is historical fiction set in the beginning of the 20th century, at least when the book opens. It's just the beginning, 1901 or 1902. And the main character is Esme, at that time a young girl, 5 or 6 years old. She lives with her father, and her father is one of the people who are tasked with making, quote unquote, the first Oxford English Dictionary. So the historical fact of making the first Oxford English Dictionary is put into this book, and then we have some messages coming in, and it's bleeping and beep. Like I said, we just roll with it. I'm not gonna refilm this. No. Anyway, so this is a historical fact, and we learn a lot about how that dictionary was made, how the words were chosen, how the words were defined. But there is also, the main story is about Esme, how she finds certain words that are missing from the dictionary that have to do with women. And the first one is the word bondsmaid. And then she starts to collect these quote unquote lost words. And we follow Esme in her journey, coming of age, in the time of the first suffragette movement, the first feminist wave, as you can call it, and at the same time the making of this first great dictionary. I love the setting. I'm all in for a book about language, dictionaries, words. I love that. But I especially really loved the story of Esme and the different through Esme, we get a different vantage point into dictionaries, at least at that time. And I thought it was fascinating and brilliant and captivating. So it made the top 3 without any doubt. So these were my 3 top reads, new releases in 2020. On to the flops. And the first one, let's say none of these books are horribly, none of these books, it's only 2 books. I mean, it's a matter of taste more than anything, I would say, with both of these books. I just want to say that up front, but you know that. Of course it is. And the first one is Lily King, Writers and Lovers. Lily King's previous book, Euphoria, a fictionalized account of Margaret Mead's journey into Africa in the 1930s. I quite liked. I wasn't blown away by the book like some other readers, but I quite liked it, and I was interested in what Lily King would do next. So when this book came out in the spring, I bought it, and it was a real disappointment. It's set in the late 1990s, 1997-ish, and we follow a 30-year-old woman, Casey Peabody, who just doesn't get it right. She has just been through a breakup, and she has these, jobs to pay the rent that she doesn't like, and she lives in a place that she doesn't like, and she wants to be a writer. That's what she wants to be, but it's not really, it's not really coming along that well. So I thought that was interesting. Being an author myself, I like to read about people who also struggle with writing, especially if they're quite a bit younger. Anyway, that's mean. But yeah, I mean, this book, it was not badly written. It was okay, but it was way too much of, the artist caught in between 2 men, and then the rough guy and the tough guy. He saves the world and her creativity. I'm exaggerating, but it was way too much of that for me. It was cliched, I felt, about creativity, but also about the relationship between men and women. It was very gender stereotypical, and that always irks me. So no, this, despite the interesting premise, this just didn't work for me at all. The second book that I didn't like, and I really didn't like it, was a prize-winning book. Surprise, surprise. The winner of this year's Booker International Prize, Marieke Lucas Reineveld, The Discomfort of Evening. I can't even remember the title correctly. Let me check that of this. The Discomfort of Evening, yes. Marieke Lucas Reineveld is a Dutch author and identifies as non-binary. Marieke is a female Dutch first name, and Lucas is a male. That's why she has these 2, or they have these 2 names. So I'm going to use they, at least I'll try to. And the book was translated from the Dutch by Michelle Hutchison. I read the book in Dutch and in English. And I didn't think the English translation was very good. It was flattening a lot of the poetic language and imagery of the original. And one of the things that the book definitely had was a good command of language. Reineveld is a poet originally, if you can say that, and you can feel that in the Dutch, but in the English you can't, and there are also mistakes, or I would call mistakes, in the translation. So if you want to read the book and you can't read Dutch, I also read part of the German translation, and that was quite a bit better, but most of you will probably have to read the English translation, but when I'm done, you don't want to read the book anyway. It is quite a short book about a young girl, 12-ish, when the book opens, Jas, living with her family, farmers, quite poor. I mean, not poor in the sense that they are starving, but they don't have much money. They live a harsh life in the present day in a quite or very conservative kind of village community in the Netherlands. These kind of communities exist in the Netherlands, so it's not made up. And then tragedy strikes the family, and it is the book then deals with Jas dealing with that tragedy. That doesn't sound uninteresting, and it isn't, but there is no real development. I thought the use of violence was gratuitous. It didn't serve a purpose other than to shock. At least for me, it didn't. And the way it was gross. Not only the violence, but also the way Jas saw the world. Everything she saw, whether it's flowers or milk or food or people, reminded her of bile or vomit or poop or some other excrement. And that got really boring. And there was no, it was that way in the beginning, and it stayed all the way through. So I thought it didn't deliver anything emotionally for me, despite the tragedy that is at the core of the book. The setting was, yeah, okay, but not very interesting. At least it wasn't done in an interesting way. And the use of the language, the gore, and the grossness was just really getting old and boring. So I didn't like the book at all. It was one of the worst reads for me in 2020. So I definitely had to include it in the Tops and Flops 2020 new releases. Anyway, this was the second part of my 2020 tops and flops. So in total, 6 books in the tops and 4 books in the flops. I hope you had a really, really good reading year. I wish you all the best for 2021. Stay safe and healthy. I'm looking forward to your comments as always, and I'll see you in the next year.